Continuamos con nuestra cobertura especial desde la Feria Internacional del Libro en Guadalajara y como usted sabe, parte de esta feria es el coloquio que se está organizando en torno a los desafíos de la civilización actual. Lo está organizando la Universidad de Guadalajara en conjunto con la Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México. Hemos tenido varios de los ponentes de los distintos paneles aquí en el programa y hoy me da mucho gusto recibir a Claudia Anzani. Claudia es una experta en el tema de cultura, que es fundamental para tratar de entender qué es lo que está pasando. Claudia es italiana y es una experta, como le digo, en estos temas de la cultura. Claudia, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
So, culture. How would we define culture nowadays?
Well, culture is obviously very hard to define. I think it's one of the words in the dictionary that has the most meanings.
Yes.
We can talk about culture, or at least the way I'm going to talk about culture refers mainly to culture as identity.
Okay.
Or like local identities, but also artistic expression and creativity.
Okay, but when you talk about local identities and you are from Italy, what are you talking about? The identity of Naples, you are from Naples, or the identity of Toscana, or the identity of Rome, which is very different, by the way.
Yeah, no, it is. Identity, the concept of identity is not straightforward, obviously, and it's not, even if we narrow it down to our city, even if I say, okay, I'm from Rome, so my identity is being Roman, obviously being Roman for me is going to be something different from like another Roman, although we will have something in common.
Now, with globalization, what's going to happen with globalization and culture? Would you say that we are developing a global culture?
Yes, definitely. Globalization is obviously very interesting in, when it comes to culture. It has raised some significant issues culturally. So whereas in some cases, you know, some people say that globalization has led to the loss of cultural identity and some kind of like a homogenization of the culture. But in some cases, we can say that actually that's really positive because globalization is an opportunity to connect with a lot of other cultures. So my topic today will actually be related to that. Okay. And we'll talk about globalization, the cultural policy in the context of our global culture, and what does it mean to be for a place or like a city or like a government, like a national government, to be open or closed to external influences and external cultures, and what kind of consequences does this have on a local and global scale.
Now, with capitalism, culture has become kind of a business, a business, a major business, I would say.
Yeah.
What's your take on that? I mean, culture should be a business, should not be a buess? Or sometimes has to be a business, and sometimes not?
I think we tend to have like a kind of like a romantic idea of like culture and cultural organizations. That, you know, we tend to think that it shouldn't really be connected to, it shouldn't really be about money, but the reality is that cultural organizations are, they need financial support, so it is inevitable, as things stand today especially, that organizations need to have some sort of business acumen. It's really important, especially at the moment where, at least in Europe, we see that, you know, in the past 10 years and like longer probably, we've seen that cultural organizations are losing financial support from the government. So, for example, museums, they have to be very smart about how they find funding.
Yes.
They have to diversify their income. So. They have a lot of corporate support in a lot of cases. So that's a very controversial topic. I think it is inevitable. I think we just have to deal with the fact that cultural organizations, they need money to move forward. But there should be a limit in terms of what a museum or a cultural organization wants to compromise in terms of like its ethos, I guess, when they accept funding from different organizations.
In this show, we have debated a lot about the role of the state, of the government in culture. How much money do we, the taxpayers, have to finance and to subsidize cultural endeavors? What's your take on that? I mean, should the state be very much involved in culture, just like in Europe, or we have to, follow the American model where you have ONGs and the private sector more involved with culture?
I think probably a mixed approach is would be the best compromise, because if you have, if the government is too involved in culture, then or like a corporation or private individuals are too involved, then there just isn't a balance. I think culture needs to be supported by a variety of sources, so it can keep like a balance and it's not too influenced by one or like two different sources. It could be like the government or I don't know, like a company. I think it needs to be varied as much as possible.
Now, what's the effect of the internet in culture? Are there new sources of culture with the internet? Would you say that?
New sources of culture?
Yeah, like, some kind of that you would say this is a new culture that is developing because of the internet.
I mean, I think it's inevitable that the internet has a strong impact on culture, because I mean, culture is basically what we are. Internet is a big part of what we are today, and the way we interact. So, and it also plays an important role in in spreading ideas. So now we can have we can feel like a really strong connections with like an art movement or like an activist movement in Russia or like in any other country. So yes, I think internet plays a really big part in culture.
So what are you going to argue here in Guadalajara in your panel?
So I'm going to talk about how different places can be open, can adopt like an open or a closed approach in cultural policy to external influences and external cultures. Okay. And I'm going to basically try and answer some questions in terms of what it means to have like an open or a closed approach, and also how this impacts on the local and on the local and global communities. So at the moment we see that culture in cities and also on a government level, it is obviously playing a really important role in connecting different places, but at the same time we see that in the current political context we have a rise of xenophobia and separatism and nationalism. We can see that in the US, but actually everywhere. We see it we have seen it with Brexit in the UK, which is where I'm based. Yes. So I think it's interesting to see what kind of role culture plays in this dynamic.
But I like this concept of open or closed approach that we have with culture. Of course, I am more in the open part of the question. I like to be open to new ideas, to new cultures. But someone would say, no, I mean, there are some limits. The Western countries they have some values, and we cannot tolerate other kind of cultures or values, for example, with women and with the Muslim world, etc. So how open and how close we have to be in that debate. That's the issue, no?
Yeah, that is definitely the issue. That's like $1 million question. I think it's important to find. I believe in compromise. I think it's a good policy. I don't believe in like extreme approaches either way. I think because we live in a global world, it's inevitable that I think the natural, the organic thing to do would be to open to other cultures and creating like a stronger dialogue. But at the same time, you cannot really transform completely a culture from another. Although the risk is that, because if you do that, then in a way, we kind of lose something. We lose like a small part of our identity. But I think that's already happening.
Absolutely.
It's already happening, and I think it can be a positive thing. I think it's about finding a balance between what your roots are and what you want to take from the outside world, and trying to make it work and make it consistent. But it's a very complex.
Yeah, but there is an interesting trend, which is that I think we in the cities, in the big cities, in the big metropolis, we are more open to new cultures, and we are more cosmopolitan than nationalistic. But in the countryside, in small places, they are more nationalistic or more local. So that's a part of the clash that we are living. No, you live of course, in London. It's this big city where you have cultures from everywhere, and it's a beautiful city in that regard. But if you go 2 hours away from London, people are very different in that regard.
Yes,
no?
And people voted for Brexit after all, and it wasn't London. It was like, and I think London. I think it happens sometimes in big cities. You kind of live in a little bubble, and you think, we live in this cosmopolitan world, and this constant cultural interaction, and you take it for granted. And so, for example, I personally didn't believe that Brexit was going to happen, and a lot of people in London felt the same.
Yes,
because it was like
they were living in
a bubble.
In a bubble,
the liberal bubble. Everybody's like us, and it's so easy.
It's the same in the States with Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. They all thought in New York, San Francisco, Chicago that Hillary was going to win, but there is also Alabama and Ohio, and
we look less, and I think we tend to look more at cities because cities are becoming so important.
Yes,
we're undergoing a massive urbanization process. And that we're having about I think 60 million people every year that move into cities today. So cities are becoming I think it's easy to overlook what's outside and to take it for granted.
Absolutely. Let me ask you last question. Is this a Western debate, a Western issue, or it's also happening in Asia, let's say in the east part of the world? Is this discussion about culture, globalization, openness, closeness, is also happening in China, Japan, India?
Yeah, it's happening everywhere. Every form of culture, every nation in the world pretty much is dealing with globalization in a way or another. I've personally studied China and Singapore, and actually I'm going to talk about Abu Dhabi this evening, because the Emirates Abu Dhabi, the Emirates are actually playing a very interesting role in culture and globalization. They're building an enormous cultural district. They've actually just opened the very first Louvre in outside of Paris.
I saw the pictures. It looks fantastic.
It is very striking. It's a beautiful building. This is
a Muslim country.
It is a Muslim country, yes.
Which is interesting, no?
It is. It makes it, from a cultural perspective, it makes it very, very interesting. There are, this project is very I find it very fascinating, and it's very controversial. There are a lot of things.
Is there controversy within the Emirates about that kind of openness with Western values, let's say?
Yes, I'm sure that there must be.
Yeah.
Although the Emirates, it's also a country where we see like an enormous international community.
Yeah.
So it would be a lot different from, I don't know, a country like Egypt, like a more like homogeneous kind of country.
Okay.
So it's a very, it's going to be a very interesting case study.
Well, Claudia, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice to have you here, and good luck going back to this beautiful city of London. Do you enjoy living in London?
Yeah, I do. It comes with challenges, but yeah.
Oh yeah, it can be rough, but you know.
It is beautiful, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bueno, muchas gracias por habernos acompañado a lo largo de estas 2 semanas de esta cobertura fantástica que hemos tenido, como siempre, de la Feria Internacional del Libro en Guadalajara. Yo lo espero el próximo lunes, en punto a las 10 de la noche, cuando otra vez sea la hora de opinar. Aquí nos vemos.